abnormal weight, etc. But I must say that most usually the onset is around the teenage years. So you tend to have it starting around the teenage years into early adulthood, and then it can go on for as longer. So it depends on how long one takes, how early one seeks for help.
Okay.
And then how long it takes for them to, regain, should I say, their health back in terms of that, or make a full recovery. So usually it's just now in the UK, it's estimated that, according to NHS figures, that about 6.4% of the population of adults actually are suffering from eating disorders. And the exact cause is not actually known, but from a lot of extensive research has been done. There's a suggestion that it's a combination of there are some genetic factors that could contribute. Then, of course, psychological factors, behavioral, and then sometimes also, one's social circumstance could put one at risk or could push one into getting.
So, Hannatu, let me understand this a little bit more. So, when we talk about the eating disorders, are we saying that we are not eating properly, or we don't have a structured eating pattern, or we don't like eating at all? What exactly are we talking about?
Yeah, so it could be a combination of all.
Okay.
So yeah, all of it depending on the type. But,
and which results on in ill health. Is that the case?
Yes, that's correct. That's correct. So, it's just your behavior towards food. It's just like, well, you don't like food, or you don't eat at all, or you eat too much of it.
Oh, okay.
Or your perception of food, if I eat, and especially with the most common type, which I was just coming to the types now. That if I eat too much, or the perception of my body or my look, so I don't want to eat, because if I eat, then I'm going to lose that. So again, so that goes into self-esteem, body image issues, and which is where especially when we talk about the onset in the teenage years, because that's when you have a lot of those issues going on. So there's also the perception of oneself and the effect that they think food can have on that. So then people tend to culture certain behavior towards food, and then the result is that physically it affects their health.
And you mentioned that it has some ties with mental health as well.
Yes, because it's about your behavior towards food, and then and that's as a result of your the perception of what food does to you, or in terms of how you look and your physical state. So that's how. So that's psychological, and that's where it brings it under the mental health umbrella. Now, the common types, and there are three main or common eating disorders. So we have the anorexia, bulimia, and then binge eating. The anorexia one, which is the most common one, is when people, they just have this perception that eating will just make them gain weight. So they have to maintain a very, very low body weight, either by refusing to eat altogether, or minimizing the amount of food, or minimizing certain nutrients in food extremely. I mean, this is the extreme. So most of the time, the marked feature of people suffering from anorexia is, they usually have low body weight.
Okay.
Or they look lean. Yeah, they come across looking lean. Although, let me just chip in this comment that for people who may be suffering different eating disorders, they might look okay, they might look well, but then actually they are not well. They're ill. They are suffering. Yes, but when it comes to anorexia, and the full name is anorexia nervosa, that this is a phenomenon where people want to keep an extremely low body weight, and by doing
that they don't either eat or they eat very, very little.
Very, very little. So that's that. So that brings us to the point of your behavior towards food or your perception of yourself, then affecting how you eat or whether.
Now, from some of the information that is out there, at what age will people begin having that consciousness? Because you mentioned like teenage, but I'm sure that maybe whoever has this condition might have been fed where they were kids. So at what point do they begin to feel conscious about the fact that they don't want to eat too much, or I would put on weight? At what point?
Well, like I said, it appears from figures and from observations over the period. It appears that it's commonly set in around the teenage years. Like I said, teenage years where people are beginning to. That transition between childhood and adulthood. One is beginning to discover themselves.
Right.
All the changes that are taking place, hormonal changes. A lot of it taking place. So. And that's when also, with all the physical changes that come along with it as well, that's when a lot of teenagers are beginning to notice themselves, and then all the body image issues, self-esteem, etc. So that's when one is mostly at risk. For anybody who takes it to the extreme, usually that's the onset around that time, and then of course early adulthood. So. When you're a child and you're being fed, etc., you may not necessarily have a say, or you may not necessarily have an opinion on these issues. At the point where if you appreciate what I'm trying to say, at the point where you're probably feeding yourself, or you're making your choices of food, or making other choices, whether it's dressing, etc., then some of these issues can come in.
Okay.
Yeah.
That answers my question then. That answers my question. So what other types of eating disorders do we have?
Yes, so the other comments, we could take each one of these and go into one, but I'm just whizzing through them, just mentioning it.
Right, okay.
Listeners can go. So the next one, a common one, is bulimia. Bulimia is also an issue of, losing weight. But the difference between that is that people suffering from bulimia do eat. They might eat normally and sometimes even overeat. But then as soon as they eat, then they want to get rid of the food immediately. So you may have a case where people, they eat and then they use laxatives to purge themselves of the food that they've eaten, or get involved in extreme, exercises to lose that weight.
So in that case, it's just the taste of the food that they really want to enjoy, but they don't want the food to contribute anything to them. Is that the case?
Exactly. And I like that's a very interesting perspective you brought to it, that because it's just the taste you want. You just want the fact that you want food in your mouth or something, but then you don't want it to stay in the body. So the difference here between bulimia and anorexia is the fact that with bulimia, at least there is some conscious eating there, apparent normal eating. But then immediately, then there's an intervention to get rid of that food that's been eaten. But whereas with anorexia, sometimes there's no eating at all.
Wow, now, that's very interesting.
Yes, and all of these, a lot of it, as you can see, it's just the psychological state of people thinking, what will food do to myself or to my body? And then people take action. Quickly, there's another common one, which is called binge eating disorder.
Okay.
Now, binge eating disorder is when binge. When we talk about binge, it's just extreme eating.
Extreme eating.
Yeah, so that's why you say binge drinking. So extreme, people just eat extreme, at not regular intervals, but once in a while they just eat just like that, and that's not normal. So it's considered an eating disorder. There are so many other little factors. There's one that I'll mention quickly. It's called picker. Now, picker is where, one gets kind of addicted to a certain item. It may not necessarily, it may be a food item, but may not necessarily have the nutritional value. But then one is hooked on it, and that's what they eat constantly. Sometimes one common, or should I say, a lot of the times people say, when people are pregnant, they tend to crave for a certain thing.
I've heard about that.
Exactly. So let's say you want ice or something, you just want to eat ice.
Some of the things that the cravings demand. I've seen charcoal.
Exactly. So they don't have any nutritional value, but then somehow people just that's what they kind of live on. And that's abnormal as well.
Right. In about 30 seconds, a roundup for us. I know that next week, God willing, we will be delving a bit more into this.
Yeah. Okay, I'll just end by saying that, if one notices any of these symptoms in you, either, a relative, a loved one, a child, or anybody, there is help out there. You just need to see your GP, and a lot of this is dealt with psychoanalytical counseling, and then of course we could help also with in terms of dietary and things that people can put together to help put them back on normal.
Great. Mr. Asiedu, that has been very helpful, and we will get into this deeper, God willing, next week. So thanks very much one more time, as usual, for the amazing tidbits. And it was streamed live on YouTube, so you can go catch this information that has been shared right now. So the news is up next.
Thank you.
Bye.
Top scientists are among those who've been paying tribute to Professor Stephen Hawking, who has died at the age of 76. The world-renowned physicist passed away at his home in Cambridge in the early hours of this morning. Tim Berners-Lee, who invented the World Wide Web, says we've lost a colossal mind. Our reporter Joe Tidy says America